Did you know, in the vast history of wars on our planet, there have been countless situations? Situations where events grotesquely piled up upon one another, leading to outcomes that previously seemed impossible, even borderlining the mystical. No? Well then, listen closely. This is a story of great glory and dishonorable defeat, of immense bravery and unprecedented carelessness. It's about two ships, lost in battle against each other, now lying at the bottom of the ocean. They're within cannon-shot distance from one another, near the sandy shores fringed by mangrove forests along the coast of Western Australia. But before we uncover what happened on that fateful day, November 19th, 1941, we need to travel back to 1934, to Britain, to witness the birth of the light cruiser Sydney of the Royal Australian Navy, destined to become a faithful guardian of the sea lanes for the British Empire, which at that time still ruled the seas. And it did become one, swift, clad in famous English steel, powerfully armed. It also became the pride of the then modest Australian Navy and a symbol of pride for its fleet and country by the Australians. With a displacement of 6,830 tons, a length just over 171 meters, and a width of 17 meters, the cruiser had armor reaching a thickness of 76 mm, and 4 steam turbines generating 72,000 horsepower, allowed this steel beast to race through the waters at a speed of 32.5 knots. That's 60 kilometers per hour, faster than most cars could achieve at the time. Its artillery, 8 main caliber guns, 150 mm in 4 turrets, 16 anti-aircraft artillery guns, 8 torpedo tubes. Aboard was a reconnaissance aircraft, Supermarine, which, had it been used on that fateful day of battle, the course of history might have taken a different spiral. But alas, history knows no subjunctive mood. Moreover, we need to transport ourselves to Nazi Germany in 1938 to witness the launch of a cargo ship named Steiermark, which was meant to toil the seas, boosting the economy of the Third Reich. However, with the outbreak of the Great War, it was refitted as an auxiliary cruiser, now bearing the name Cormoran, with a displacement of 19,900 tons, a hull length of 164 meters, and a width just shy of 21 meters. The power generated by its twin diesel-electric setup was 16,000 horsepower, though its speed was modest, only 19 knots, which is about 36 kilometers per hour. The crew consisted of 397 men, including 18 officers. Its armament was quite formidable, 6 150 mm caliber guns, albeit models from 1906, 175 mm gun, and its anti-aircraft artillery included 11 guns of 20, 37, and 40 mm caliber, as well as 6 torpedo tubes and a significant stockpile of mines. On board, there were 2 Arado seaplanes. Hitler's Germany had entered a war that began to devour the Reich's resources at a pace not even the most prominent military theorists could have predicted before it started. Consequently, the Kriegsmarine's high command made the decision to convert dozens of requisitioned merchant fleet ships into combat units, raiders. These ships were tasked to pirate the sea lanes, inflicting irreparable damage to Britain, which then, as now, heavily depended on seaborne supplies. By November 19, 1941, Sydney and its crew were enveloped in glory, and rightfully so. In 1940, in the Mediterranean Sea, fighting against the formidable Italian fleet, the cruiser sank the destroyer Espero. Its participation was crucial in the battle near Cape Spada, where the cruiser Bartolomeo Colleoni, the pride of the Duce, Benito Mussolini's fleet, was destroyed. The captain during this glorious period was John Collins. When the frequent attacks by German raiders compelled the Australian Admiralty to recall the cruiser home, the ship was met by jubilant crowds at the port. It was then that the cruiser received a new commander, Captain Joseph Burnett, a staff officer with no combat experience, another link in the chain of fateful events leading to Australia's greatest naval tragedy. Cormoran, too, could boast of its successes. In its 10-month voyage in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans, it had sunk 10 merchant ships and captured a tanker, which was sent home to the Reich with a prize crew. The raider was commanded by Fregattenkapitän Theodor Detmers, a man who, had he been born 200 years earlier, would have stood at the helm of a pirate brig, bold, decisive, experienced, relentless with himself, and even more so with Germany's enemies. He prepared his crew for imminent battle, transforming them into a single organism, bonded by iron discipline, where everyone knew what to do and when. On that fateful day, for both ships, they encountered each other 150 nautical miles off the Australian coast, only to end up as mangled hulls on the ocean floor and forever in human memory. The Germans were the first to spot the enemy at 16 o'clock, their vessel camouflaged as the Dutch freighter Straat Malacca. Indeed, Cormoran, and it shared a similar silhouette, and it appeared there to lay mines on the busy shipping routes. The cruiser Sydney was on its way back to base, with the crew in a relaxed state, looking forward to shore leave, a pint with a mate at the local pub, or a good whiskey at the Navy Officers Club. Cormoran, taken aback by the surprise, attempted to turn away from the Australians in vain. The white bow at the stem began to grow rapidly, and the cruiser effortlessly caught up with the camouflaged raider. For a while, the ships sailed on parallel courses, and at 17 o'clock, Sydney shone its searchlight with a message, NNJ, identify yourself, what nation? The response with signal flags was PQI, Straat Malacca, Dutch, civilian. To further confuse the Australians, the German radio operator broadcasted the British code signal QQQ, a suspicious vessel is approaching me. The Dutchman must have already soiled his trousers with fear, joked the watch officer on Sydney's bridge, and the overall relaxed atmosphere on the Australian cruiser began to spin the wheel of inexplicably ludicrous mistakes, leading to a tragic end. Why didn't Captain Burnett report the encounter with the Dutch freighter to naval headquarters? Had they received data indicating that no such vessel was in Australian waters, he might have immediately suspected a raider. Why wasn't the Supermarine, reportedly ready with a warmed-up engine according to the Germans, launched from the catapult? Why didn't they maintain distance? Why didn't they use their speed advantage? Why were the cruiser and its crew utterly unprepared for battle? Observing even a few of the above would have allowed Sydney, with its long-range modern artillery, to turn the German into a sinking, hole-ridden tub within 15 minutes. We may never know the answers to these questions. At 17:25, Sydney transmitted another searchlight signal. Where are you heading? The German reply was, Batavia, asterisk. During the Dutch rule, modern Jakarta was called Batavia. Then another request for the secret call sign, IK, was immediately repeated, impatiently duplicated with signal flags. The sea wolves of Hitler couldn't possibly know it. The masks were off. The Kriegsmarine flag flew high. Cormoran's camouflage screens were thrown overboard, and within just 6 seconds, the trained German gunners opened fire. The air was filled with the thunderous blasts of 150 mm guns and the bark of anti-aircraft autocannons. The very first shots claimed the lives of the senior officers of the Australian cruiser, along with the captain. Death spared him from dishonor. The hastily made retaliatory volley from the Australians overshot. The Germans heard the shells whistling over their heads. Methodically, without missing at such close range, the Germans hammered shell after shell into the side of the cruiser, whose hull shuddered with each hit. Meanwhile, rapid-fire anti-aircraft guns turned the deck and superstructures of the cruiser into a sieve, and the seaplane became a heap of burning debris. Cormoran launched torpedoes, one of which tore open the Australian's bow under the gun turret. Captain Detmers of the Raider later described the chaos of this swift and ruthless battle. The first salvo from one gun fell short, distance approximately 1,300 meters. The second salvo, 3 guns, overshot by 400 meters. 4 seconds later, firing continued. Hits on the enemy's bridge and rangefinder tower. Right after that, the enemy's full salvo, no hits. Then, 8 salvos were fired with a 5-second interval. Hits on the aircraft, bridge, and the hull between the 2 funnels. Anti-aircraft machine guns and the 37mm gun kept the torpedo tubes, anti-aircraft guns, and bridge under fire. Until our 5th salvo, there was no response. Then turret X, rear turret raised, fired rapidly and accurately. Recovering from the shock, Sydney's commanders showed that they, too, were made of stern stuff. The 2 remaining gun turrets, out of the 4 they had, shifted to manual operation and managed to land 4 shells on Cormoran, hitting the radio room, which proved fatal, machine room disabling the engine and steam boilers, killing and maiming almost the entire engine crew. The Raider was immobilized, At 1745, Sydney performed a desperate maneuver, a circulation, likely attempting to ram the raider, and launched a torpedo, which fortunately for the Germans, missed. Cormoran returned fire with its main guns, further damaging the already semi-destroyed Sydney. Across its deck, bodies lay motionless, indifferent to the battle's hell. At 1803, as the German officers' chronometers coldly recorded, the Australian cruiser, heavily listing forward into the waves and ablaze, began to slowly retreat southward, its turret guns silent, their barrels askew. The distance grew and the raider ceased firing. A pitch-black tropical night engulfed the sea, and only the red glow of fires indicated to the Germans the direction of their sinking adversary. Sea water rushed into Sydney's breaches like into open wounds, causing the ship to list increasingly, and enveloped in steam as the red-hot metal from the fires met the water, it sank to the bottom, 12 nautical miles from the epic battleground. Of the 645 men aboard the Australian cruiser, most perished during the battle with the German raider. The rest, along with their ship, which had been their home but became their grave, in a desperate attempt to reach the shore that was so near, not a single person survived. The raider, too, gradually became a flaming wreck. It became clear that the ship had to be abandoned, and Captain Detmers ordered the crew to leave the ship at 21 o'clock. German sailors began to lower the lifeboats and rafts. One raft, carrying wounded, capsized and sank almost instantly. Following the ancient maritime tradition, the captain was the last to leave the ship. Charges of explosives, always ready for the raiding crew like a cyanide capsule for a spy facing failure, were detonated immediately. Apart from the 80 who perished during the battle and drowned on the raft, the remaining German sailors were rescued by various ships and surrendered as prisoners of war, having reached the shores on their own and surviving the war's fiery, deadly whirlwinds. For 3.5 more years, these whirlwinds would erase entire cities on land, sink hundreds of ships at sea, break thousands of airplanes in the air, claiming the lives of millions, and crushing the destinies of hundreds of millions into dust, until peace was finally established on the tortured, exhausted planet. Unfortunately today, that peace once again becomes a victim of the predatory ambitions of mad dictators. Perhaps it's fitting to end this story with the words of Cormoran's gunner, Hermann Ortmann, spoken in his later years, reminiscing about his tumultuous youth and looking through faded cornflower blue eyes out the window of his Hamburg apartment, giving the only interview of his life. "We opened fire before Sydney, yes, but if anyone, as I've heard, accuses us of a war crime, then all such accusations are nonsense. It was a fair fight. We expected to be obliterated in seconds. That didn't happen, it was our luck. But it was a fair fight like no other. War is war.